On the 2nd of March, the year 2012, three regional leaders led by Kenyan President former Mwai Kibaki and South Sudanese President Salva Kiir, joined by Meles Zenawi, the former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, launched an ambitious LAPSSET project. This was touted as a game changer in the region, altering how trade and movement of people is done in the region. 7 years down the line, has the project lived to its promise, or the dream just died? Well, joining me on Inside Government is Director General of LAPSSET, Sylvester Kasuku, who's going to explain to us where are we and what is the way forward.
Thank you very much, O'Brien.
Nice
welcome. Welcome.
Very good.
Thank you.
Please.
Asante sana. Yeah.
So thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Inside Government. Tell me this, 7 years down the line, what have we achieved or done with LAPSSET?
Thank you very much, O'Brien. 7 years down the line, since the inception of the LAPSSET Corridor program, after it was formally launched on the 2nd of March, year 2012, we have since seen the delivery of the Isiolo to Moyale Road, which is 500 kilometers. Construction was completed last year. We've also seen considerable progress on the Ethiopian side, in which they are also reconstructing the 500 kilometers between Moyale and Hawassa. They are about over 70% completion rate. And we've also seen considerable progress on the Ethiopian side with regard to the construction of the motorway between Addis Ababa and Hawassa. Hawassa and Addis Ababa are about 300 kilometers apart. So this is the corridor, the LAPSSET corridor coming towards Kenya. So Ethiopia has decided to turn the section between Hawassa and Addis Ababa into a motorway due to heavy traffic on the Ethiopian side. And they are foreseeing a situation in which we'll have much, much more traffic once Lamu Port starts to function for Ethiopia. So they are getting ready. We've equally seen the taking of electric power connection through the national grid up to Lamu Port. This was completed in the year 2015. We've also seen the commencement of the construction of Lamu Port, which is currently at about 65% completion rate for all the three terminals. And we have also seen ourselves complete the first terminal, or the first berth, as it were, because we are currently constructing 3 berths in Lamu. So the first berth is more or less complete. It's about 99.99% complete. We remain with the 0.0001%.
So it's ready for ships?
Yes, the berth is ready. What is happening is that we are completing the dredging of the channel to make it compliant to the 18 meters depth that is being sought, so that we can have larger ships coming to Lamu. At the same time, we have the next 3 berths, the next 2 berths also, progressing quite well, and we expect to complete them by the end of next year, that is 2020. At the same time, we've seen the commencement of the construction of Lamu to Garsen Road, as well as rehabilitation works for Garsen to Garissa, so that we have an off-take route ready for the port. We've also seen the construction works commence for what we are calling the Port Link Road. This is about 10 kilometers from the port up to the Hindi Junction. This particular link is also being constructed to a dual carriageway standard, considering that port traffic is expected to be heavy and is expected to be, it will attract certain vehicles which might cause congestion if we do not provide for adequate motorway.
Now, you talked about, having the 3 berths, ready by the year 2020. And we have seen a lot of, reorganization within the regional political space. Tell me this, how do you think the mending of fences between Ethiopia and Djibouti likely to alter this game changer?
I would like to state that the Lapset corridor, in its vision, actually redefines how we build corridors or how we create integrating infrastructure. The Lapset corridor heralds a paradigm shift of what we are calling the port-to-port corridors, in which Lamu Port is connected to the port of Djibouti. Lamu Port is connected to the port of Eritrea. Lamu Port is connected to the port of Sudan. Lamu Port is connected to other ports in the western part of Africa through the land bridge. So it is not about any singular investment being undertaken by any investor within any part of Africa that really does injure Lapset. We are looking for more investments of this nature across the globe. The African Union vision is to create about 1.3 ton added capacity for ports in Africa by the year 2040. Lamu Port is just injecting an estimated value of over 100 million tons per year. If we have to create port platforms that inject 1.3 billion ton added capacity to ports by the year 2040, then we are talking about many, many other more ports that need to be built. If we are to do business in Africa and prime Africa as really indeed a key investment platform globally, then we must have many, many more of these type of investments. But bringing you quickly to the fact that there are investments already being attracted to some of those areas you are mentioning, like Djibouti, Eritrea, Somalia, that tells you that Africa is fast increasing its investment attractiveness. And Lamu Port, together with the Lapset corridor, is indeed enhancing that attractiveness by attracting more investments towards Kenya. And I wouldn't really shy to say that there are many investors looking forward to coming to Lamu and to the Lapset corridor upon the completion of the first 3 terminals of Lamu Port. And you will see them. So by the mere fact that some investors have gone, or let's say have gone to Somaliland or any other place, does not really give us does not put us on the wrong side of the graph.
What happens after the 3 bars are launched in next year?
Definitely, we are going to launch what we are calling a mega port business platform. You are aware that Lamu Port is so far the largest port to be built on the east coast of the African continent. It is bigger than any other port that you have on the east coast of the African continent. Therefore, Lamu Port is heralding in what we can say a new business dynamics. It's also creating new business niches around ports that has not been seen in ports around the continent. For example, we expect transshipment to be a key business in Lamu. We are equally twinning the development of Lamu Port together with the development of the Lamu Industrial City, juxtaposed just next to the port. Why? Because many port cities within the east coast of the African continent, and just like any other part of Africa, are currently captive of the developments that have taken place around them. For example, Mombasa Port does not have appropriate space to build a new industrial city. The same applies to Dar es Salaam, the same applies to Durban, the same applies to Maputo, the same applies to Mogadishu, among many other ports that you see around the east coast of the African continent. However, Lamu does provide a new platform, a greenfield platform, where we've already undertaken the master planning of the most modern industrial city to really receive and see the development of green industries that are going to really push Kenya into the manufacturing bracket of countries around the globe. So what we are saying is that we are not just after the importation, mere importation of finished products. We are not just after exportation of raw materials, but we are after twinning and integrating our port infrastructure with industrialization path, so that we become a manufacturer, we become a producer, and we become exporters of finished products from Africa.
Let's talk about the other baths. So we know there are 32 baths that are supposed to be constructed along the Lamu corridor. 3 are almost complete with a target of 2020. 29 still remaining. How will the funding be structured?
Number one, we as a government have come up with a strategy to ensure that the LAPSSET corridor projects become what we call the investment attraction for local investors as well as investors from outside the country. So we are not priming our internal resources within government as the only resources that to be used in developing these infrastructures. What we have done in building the first 3 terminals, the first 3 berths, is really to create Lamu Port as a going concern. We went to break ground, and by breaking ground, we have established Lamu Port as an existing port, upon which investors can now come to start their investments. With constructing the first 3 berths, we have also created or put up what we call the common user facilities. For example, we have dredged the channel. Channel dredging cannot be the work of an investor because those are sunk funds. And no investor can invest in a channel, and because you don't charge for the channel, that becomes a common user space. So therefore, as government, we have taken the responsibility to open up Lamu Port by building the first 3 berths. Now, going forward, the construction and operation of the remaining berths will ideally be given to private sector so that we can start to make port business as a key investment area for investors in Kenya as well as investors from outside Kenya. We have also other facilities that are to be put up alongside the port. As I've already said, the industrial city is going to be mainly grown by private sector investments. So, in a nutshell, projects under LAPSSET are mainly geared for private sector investments. Whatever we do as government is only to facilitate, is only to open up, is only to create a level playing ground for investors to come on board and to find the attraction that they are looking for efficient resource utilization in their investments.
On top of the port, almost 3 billion shillings was sunk into upgrading of the Isiolo airport into international level. However, this facility still remains idle with very minimal business. What is the future plan?
Yes, O'Brien, what I would like to state is that Isiolo Airport is continuously being given the facelift that it does require. Number one, the government is going to lengthen the runway so that it can take bigger aircrafts, provision of aircraft hangars, as well as warehousing facilities to support cargo transportation is also currently being pursued by government. And in the coming financial year, you will see that resources have been dedicated to improve facilities at Isiolo Airport. The initial investment that was done was not the only investment that was required, but it was the start of investing in Isiolo Airport. So further improvement works are going to be done so that we can enable the airport now to start being a platform and an entry point and an exit point into international.
When do we expect the turnaround of the airport?
We expect that by the end of next year into 2021, we expect a lot of business to start operating in that airport.
From where?
I would like to tell you that there's a lot of agricultural businesses, among many others, that can be supported from Isiolo Airport. If you look at the movement of farmers from other regions into areas that neighbor Isiolo, whether you're talking about Laikipia, you're talking about Meru, you're talking about Isiolo itself, you're talking about Samburu, you will see that there is a growing trend of new agricultural investments that are moving into these areas. So what we can say again is that we are also aware of Mira trade that is currently being supported from Wilson Airport. That gives us the reason to continue to upgrade the facilities at Isiolo Airport so that it can now support the export of some of these commodities directly from Isiolo.
But Mira Trade have in the past complained that using the Isiolo International Airport is actually much more expensive when they are shipping their goods to Somalia as compared to tracking their consignment to Wilson Airport. How then do we plan to make it more affordable for investors in Meru to ship their goods from the airport? Plus, the other thing, we know for sure that Europe has been very harsh on the importation of Mira. And the construction of the airport was premised on the fact that demand for Mira in Europe was going to increase. How will all these affect the operations of the airport?
I would like to say that the discussion around Mira was just one of the specs of discussions that surround the utilization of Isiolo International Airport. So it shouldn't be an issue if Mira is banned in Europe, because that is not the only agricultural produce. That's not the only produce or commodity that is generated around Mount Kenya area as well as other parts of the Lapsset corridor. You will realize that we've seen how other investments are taking place in other jurisdictions in similar environments as that of Isiolo. And we expect that by the time we open up this corridor for bigger business, as we are currently doing, we'll see a lot of growing businesses beyond the traditional businesses like Mira. We'll have agro-processing taking place. We'll have other industrial processes taking place. We'll have more services taking place. Even tourism in itself is one industry that is going to be boosted a great deal by that airport. And as we continue to connect the corridor, for example, by completing the connection between Lamu, Garissa, and Isiolo, then completing the Isiolo to Turkana side, you will start to see a lot more economic activities and attractors being premised around that environment.
Environmentalists, have been also very critical of the project, saying that we know for sure that the Lamu Archipelago is a UNESCO heritage site. And definitely there is no development without impacting the environment. How are you going to ensure that, you work with a delicate balance of conserving the environment and still bringing development to Lamu?
Yes, O'Brien, this discussion about the impact of Lamu Port and the developments that are primed for Lamu area on the Lamu Archipelago is one that has been long, but sometimes it is off target. Why? Because the port is not being built on the Lamu Archipelago. That's number one. The port is being built at Kirilana, very far away from the Lamu Archipelago.
How far away?
You've been there with me, and it is over 10 kilometers from.
About 12 kilometers.
Yeah, 12 kilometers, and we've given it quite what you can call a good back 10. We've kept off. From the Lamu Archipelago, and we've equally drawn a cordon off line with the coastline, so that we remain on the mainland and we don't touch the Lamu Archipelago.
But the fishermen are complaining there that since the construction of the port started, the number of fish around Lamu has gone down by almost 40%. How farther down is this likely to go if we continue with the construction?
Of course, that line of argument is subjective and has not been confirmed. And I would like to say that, in fact, the demand for fish from Lamu has grown tremendously as a result of the construction activities at Lamu Port and the opening up of Lamu for business. So we do know that fishing is not just limited to near the port area, but the sea is wide and varied and well stocked with fish.
What we need to
do is to actually build capacity of our fishermen in Lamu so that they can go into the deep sea and come up with much more fish catch, and so that they can meet the market demands. But I can assure you that construction works at Lamu Port is not one activity that can really make fish disappear from Lamu. It is limited to Kililana area, and we are actually speaking to fishermen to start to find out how they can actually build their capacity to go into larger and higher grounds within the sea.
When you look at Kenya, you know, our strategic plan, our strategic energy plan is to do away with non-renewable energy and embrace renewable energy. And there has been very bold steps, you know, being made from embracing wind, solar, and of course geothermal. And we know for sure at this point now, almost 80% of power generated in Kenya is considered to be clean energy. So are we making many steps forward and some steps backward?
Not really. I would like to state again that the history of coal energy is a very smoky history, because coal energy started from the very polluting, smoking plants. As the world progresses into the future, new coal technologies are being brought up, and we've seen even the US is now considering the new coal technologies. They are even the producers of that new coal technology. We've seen the new coal technology plants being put up now in different parts of the world, and they are actually very compliant. If you go into a new coal technology plant, you wouldn't even tell that it's a coal plant.
Are we planning to adopt this kind of technology?
That is the technology. That is the technology that has been proposed for Lamu. So it is not the one that we saw in Manchester, or the ones we've seen in the history of coal-driven South Africa, or any other jurisdiction that did suffer from coal pollution. What we are doing as a government is to make sure that any technology that we deploy must ideally be for the good of the environment. Because what is good for the environment is good for the people.
Because we have to wind up, tell me this, when do we expect to have all the projects under LAPSSET complete and underutilization?
Number one, I would like to state that the development of the LAPSSET corridor is ideally the development of about 70% of Kenya's land space. Number one. Number two, the strategic delivery of the LAPSSET corridor projects is sequenced to make sure that what we need first is developed on a priority basis. So we have started with the port, the highways, the pipelines, as well as the service infrastructures like power lines, power plants, water, communication systems, among many others. We've also started with the airports. But I would like to state that there are parts of these LAPSSET corridor projects that will take longer to complete. For example, the resort cities. We might not be able to complete building a resort city because a resort city will continue to grow and grow and grow. Just like when we started Nairobi, when Nairobi was first started. Nairobi, you wouldn't put a time horizon on the growth and the development of Nairobi. It will continue to grow. So the resort city components of LAPSSET will grow for a much longer time as they mature. However, the line infrastructures are having a timeline of, we are looking at a timeline of about 2030, particularly coming up to the railway bit of it, because it will take a little bit longer to bring the railway into the fore, because we have to start with the infrastructures that deliver in diverse forms. For example, the road infrastructure enables us to move from door to door. We are able to move from the port up to exact points of delivery. And it also enables many other operations, both at business people level, at individual level, and even at government level. So we are currently putting up the infrastructures that enable us to start the business, the ports and the like. And also coming to the port, considering that we have a number of terminals to build, we will also take much longer, considering that port berths or terminals will be built on need basis. When the demand for port services increase, then we will be able to increase the supply of the same port infrastructure. Good. For example, the port infrastructure that has already been, which is being put in Lamu now, has almost equivalent capacity with the entire container capacity of Mombasa port. What we have put up in Lamu now, matches the entire capacity of Mombasa port in terms of container, business. So you can imagine the nature of the port that we are putting up in Lamu. The moment you put up another one, then you put up a much bigger capacity and you create a much bigger space for bigger business. Good. So this will grow over a longer period of time.
It is a continuous process. Yeah, it's a continuous journey. Yeah. Very good. Thank you very much. And of course, we look forward to witnessing the launch of the first berth next year.
Right.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Well, Sylvester Kasuku is the Director General of the Lamu Port Project, joining us here on Inside Government to enumerate to us what are the progress being made in regard to the realization of this project. Well, you have heard it from him. You have been watching Inside Government coming to you from here, KBC Broadcasting House. And my name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again on Thursday, same time right here on KBC. Bye for now.
Right.
Thank you.